So you're scrolling through your favorite supplement website, bulksupplements.com, looking at what the newest trends are and those Black Friday deals since it is just after Thanksgiving and Cyber Monday. And you come across something called NMN, which stands for nicotinamide mononucleotide. And so you do a little more digging and you find out that this strange substance has been delisted as a dietary supplement by the FDA and now listed as an experimental drug. And so you start asking yourself more questions. What it is, why did that happen, and what does it actually do for you? And then you find forums of people alleging massive miraculous benefits of suppressing age-related adipose formation to improving cardiovascular health and reducing the likelihood of impaired neuronal function in the brain and improving mitochondrial function. But is any of this actually true? And why would the FDA move to ban it? Well, let's talk about the science behind that.
Welcome to The Science Behind That with Atticus Hamilton.
Sponsored by Denver Family Lawyers, advocates in advocacy since 1997.
Hello, all you scientists. Welcome back to The Science Behind That podcast. I'm your host, Atticus Hamilton, and as you heard in the intro, today we are going to be talking about nicotinamide mononucleotide, or NMN. Now, before I get started here, I would like to invite all of you out there to go grab yourselves a nice steaming hot cup of coffee, add a little bit of maple syrup in it, and we're going to be jumping right in. So, in today's episode, we are going to be talking about a lot of different things. Obviously, we're going to be talking a lot about biochemistry, human health and medicine, and then something else that we generally don't really talk about on this podcast, which is the legal system a little bit, and more specifically, the laws behind regulations of dietary supplements and why large pharmaceutical companies are able to effectively remove supplements and effective drugs that people have been able to get, why they're able to effectively remove that and limit people's ability to obtain those substances. So this is going to be a longer episode. We're going to go through a lot of material here. But before we can get into the laws behind NMN, the biochemistry behind it, any of that stuff, we need to first talk about what nicotinamide mononucleotide actually is. So NMN, or nicotinamide mononucleotide, is a nucleotide derivative from ribose, nicotinamide, and nicotinamide riboside, and niacin. In humans, NMN is used to create nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, or NAD+, which I'm sure we all know from our basic biology courses. And NAD+ has a lot of different functions that it's used for. Through a variety of different biochemical pathways, NAD+ has direct influence in metabolic pathways, DNA repair, chromatin remodeling, cellular senescence, and immune cell function. Now, I'm not going to go into those biochemical pathways because, frankly, if I did, this episode would probably be like 4 hours long. NAD+ has a lot of complex biochemistry behind it, but it is important to note that it is directly involved in all of those things I just mentioned. And so how does NMN relate into this? Well, when taken orally, it NMN will be absorbed through the stomach, the epithelium, through the stomach lining in about 2 minutes into the bloodstream. And in about 5 to 10 minutes, almost 100% of it will be successfully absorbed into the bloodstream. Once in the bloodstream, again, through a variety of different biochemical pathways, NMN is pretty much immediately converted into NAD+. So when you have mice or when you have humans that are taking NMN, basically what happens is that they're just increasing their levels of NAD+ significantly. And so if that's considering that, then what are the alleged things that NMN can directly benefit? In a variety of studies, supplementation not only increases NAD plus biosynthesis, obviously, but it suppresses age-related fat gain or weight gain. It enhances insulin secretion and insulin action, and there have actually been studies in obese mice to show that this has been effective in reducing the effects of insulin-related conditions. Along with that, it's also been shown to improve mitochondrial function, improve neuronal function, and even more interestingly to me, improve circulatory health through a variety of different pathways. It has been demonstrated as preserving cardiac mitochondrial cells and preventing heart failure. It has been demonstrated as reducing the aging or the senescence we see in our cardiomyocytes. And it has been shown to help patients with heart disease with their symptoms and with battling through their illness. And so I'm going to get into a couple studies in a minute here, but before I do that, I think it is really important to point out here that NMN in 2022, roughly, in October, the FDA basically came out with the decision to remove NMN from a list from the list of dietary supplements. Now, some of you out there may be like, well, Atticus, it's just not a dietary supplement, it's a drug. What does it matter that the FDA removed it from the list of dietary supplements? It's important because they have now listed it as an experimental drug. And so what that means is that sellers like Amazon have also removed it from their sites. And it's even more difficult because sellers will have to get their substances, their NMN, approved by the FDA to be able to sell it. Now, that is a good thing, right? The FDA does do a lot of good things, but in this case, it's an issue because of the reason why they did it. So the FDA didn't reschedule it as a drug because of safety concerns, and it didn't force sellers like Amazon to remove it from their platforms because of safety concerns either. The reason this happened is because a pharmaceutical company called Metro International Biotech submitted its own version of nicotinamide mononucleotide to the FDA for investigation or for review as a drug in July of 2022. And this brings up an interesting point from a legal standpoint. And no, I'm not talking about this because this podcast is sponsored by a law firm. I'm talking about this because it does affect all of you. And in fact, this has happened before with other supplements. In the past, this happened in 2020 with a supplement known as NAC or N-acetyl-L-cysteine, because that also has a lot of literature behind it to demonstrate beneficial effects. And because of that, a pharmaceutical company again submitted their own version of NAC to the FDA for review. And when that happens, it is then delisted as a supplement. So the law in the United States, I can't speak to other countries, but what I would love to know is if you guys could shoot me an email at thesciencebt@gmail.com. Let me know about NMN's legal status in your country. I'd love to know if it is also delisted from platforms in your countries. I know the second most popular countries for my podcast other than the United States are the United Kingdom and Australia. So I'd love to hear what the situation is over there. But at least in the United States, if you have a dietary supplement or if you have a drug that is being sold as a dietary supplement, if a pharmaceutical company comes around and says, you know what, that's really interesting, here's our form, and we're going to submit this for review to the FDA, then as soon as that happens, pretty much, the FDA is obligated by U.S. drug enforcement law to mandate that platforms delist that substance as a dietary supplement, A, and it also, B, has to label it as an experimental drug. Now, once it's labeled as an experimental drug, it presents issues, right? Because if it's not already FDA approved, how are the companies that are going to sell it, how are they going to show proof that their product is FDA approved? You see what I'm saying here? So NMN suppliers will have to show proof of FDA approval to keep NMN on their sites starting on March 13th, 2023. But the problem is the FDA hasn't approved it as a drug yet. So you can't show proof of approval when the approval hasn't gone through yet, when it hasn't happened yet. And so that creates difficulties for not just suppliers, but for you listeners and the people that are relying on it to get it. Now, why would a pharmaceutical company submit this substance that people have been using for years for review as a potential drug? Simply because they see an industry that they haven't capitalized on and they want to make money off of it. They want to produce a prescription required drug from something that everybody is already buying, because it's all dollars and cents. Now, I'm not one of those people that is anti-corporation, but I felt like it was important to point out the laws here behind this substance, because this is something that we don't really talk about a lot, and it is important. So, to summarize then, NMN is now unavailable on Amazon, although the irony is that a lot of companies have just put it on Amazon under a different name. But nonetheless, it was delisted as a dietary supplement and labeled as an experimental drug, all because, according to U.S. drug law, when a pharmaceutical company, in this case Metro International Biotech, submits the same substance for review as a drug, the FDA is required to delist it and list it as an experimental drug. And then that causes issues. Now, why does this happen? My theory is that the law itself probably happens, at least in a perfect world, it would be to ensure safety, but most likely it's because of lobbying from pharmaceutical companies. Nonetheless, that is the legal status right now of NMN. You, of course, still can buy it online, but it is important to talk about that when we talk about nicotinamide mononucleotide, because it is an important thing to understand. So going back to the science behind it, what is the actual biochemistry? Well, when we look at the literature here that talks about it, it becomes very interesting. A vast majority of the research out here is, of course, in mice, although there are some human studies. From the study that is out there, or the studies that are out there, NMN is basically a precursor of NAD+. And for the anti-aging side of it, researchers theorize that the mechanism by which NMN reverses cellular senescence is because it enhances NAD+ levels in the body, which we already know are involved in biochemical pathways that reduce oxidation of our proteins. It reduces telomerase shortening of our chromosomes. So there's a variety of biochemical pathways that NAD+ plays a role in. As we'll see throughout these papers, a variety of NMN's benefits are because of their upregulation and enhancement of NAD+ levels and their biochemical pathways. So when we talk about the cardiac effects of it, NMN has been shown to preserve mitochondrial homeostasis and revive heart function in overload-induced heart failure in laboratory mice. The researchers have also showed that hyperacetylation of the proteins within these myocardiocytes is primarily one of the main causes of mitochondrial dysfunction, and therefore one of the primary causes, I guess, of heart failure. And studies in mice, again, have shown that NMN administration is able to slow and even reverse protein acetylation, which reduces the symptoms and the negative effects of heart failure. In addition to that, there's also been studies that have shown that oral administration of NMN increases, obviously, the levels of NMN metabolites in human plasma to around peak levels at 300 minutes after administration. And this, after 10 weeks of administration at around 250 milligrams of NMN per day, and this is a human study, the content of Na+ increased significantly in peripheral blood mononuclear cells. That being said, there is still a lot of the pharmacokinetics behind NMN that needs to be investigated more. But ultimately, through the effects of administration, aging-related organ dysfunction, particularly in the circulatory system, decreased significantly after administration. As for atherosclerosis, there have been a variety of studies that have demonstrated, again, positive effects in with NMN administration. Ironically, it's because, at least the researchers hypothesize that it's because NMN administration increases the oxidization of long-chain fatty acids, which particularly in cardiomyocytes or heart cells, which results in the reduction of plaque in arteries. So ultimately, I invite all of you guys listening to this episode to, do your own research about NMN. However, it does seem like there is a variety of benefits to administration. Now, the vast majority of studies that I've looked at seem to say that dosages between 250 milligrams a day and 500 milligrams a day are the most beneficial. And as for side effects, generally there are very few side effects with administration. In dosages up to 500 milligrams a day, there were no significant side effects. However, that being said, there are some mild side effects, as with many things. Some of these would be like nausea, maybe headache. But other than that, it's generally, there are very few, if any, side effects. Of course, you can still report them if they arise. So overall, ladies and gentlemen, it seems like the research weighs strongly in the favor of nicotinamide mononucleotide, particularly in its anti-aging effects and improved cardiovascular health. There have also been a variety of studies that have shown that this drug can potentially increase blood flow to the brain through the processes that we've already discussed, in that NAD+, which is produced from it, is able to reduce the effects of cellular senescence or aging. And that applies to vascular endothelial cells as well. So those endothelial cells, they're telomeres, which are basically the caps on the ends of our chromosomes. As we age, they get shorter and shorter and shorter. Along with this, as we age, our DNA becomes methylated and acetylated, which increases the likelihood of errors arising in the DNA proofreading process. NAD+ reduces the process of methylation and acetylation. And so the higher concentrations of NAD+ you have, obviously the bigger reduction you're going to see in acetylation and methylation of your DNA. And we see that in laboratory studies, and we've seen plaque reduction in laboratory studies in mice particularly. And it seems like the literature does suggest that NMN is beneficial in all of the ways we discussed: anti-aging, improving cardiovascular health, along with a variety of other things. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I had a lot of fun making it today. As you could probably tell, I hope this is something that I'm pretty passionate about. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a great weekend and a great week. Remember, I will see you all on Friday, and stand up and question everything.